have a man that I have a ton of respect for. I love what they do at Midas Touch, and Ron Filipkowski joining us right now live. Ron, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on such a busy day. How are you, sir?
Yeah, you're not kidding. Busy.
Crazy, right?
Wild, yeah.
Ron, what's your first reaction? I mean, I've been saying for months that, Trump would pick J.D. Vance. What's your first reaction?
Well, I knew it was going to be Vance last week when Donald Trump Jr. has this group of influencers that he uses to sort of blast things out. And when they all started attacking Doug Burgum, which they did last Monday, that told me that it was because Jr. has always been a Vance guy, 100% Vance. So when they started attacking Burgum, that told me it was between Burgum and Vance, and they were trying to knock him out. And so all last week, all the usual suspects were all on the right were blasting Burgum. So, and then on Friday, Junior posted a video about promoting Vance. So that pretty much cinched it for me that he was the guy. But look, it's a really surprising selection because since that time I've been accumulating all this stuff on Vance, mostly stuff of Vance attacking Trump.
Right.
Clips, screenshots, deleted tweets, and I just posted the article on the MidasTouch.com website of the 14 worst things that J.D. Vance has ever said about Trump. And
he compared him to Adolf Hitler, Ron. I mean, this is a guy who called him reprehensible, obnoxious, a cynical a-hole, can't stomach Trump, never a Trump guy, a terrible candidate. He compared him to Adolf Hitler. He said he's America's next Adolf Hitler. If I'm the Democrats, I'm playing that in loops over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, he put that in a text to one of his best friends. The other interesting part about that is to dig deeper, because I spent the last few days just really watching all these old Vance interviews talking about Trump. And, you really see the guy was such a truth teller about Trump. I mean, the guy in 2016 sounds exactly like me. And what happened? What happened was back then he was talking back in 16 about running for the Senate. And then it came up again in 19. He was toying with the idea of running in 2020. And then he decided not to. He decided against Sherrod Brown. He decided in 18, decided not to, ran in 2022. People forget he was fourth in the polls. About a month out from the election, Trump had not endorsed. He was fourth in the Republican primary, polling at about 13%. He was dead in the water. He had no chance. His only shot was to get Trump to endorse him. And he befriended Donald Trump Jr. They became tight. And I think Jr. bagged that endorsement for Vance. And Vance immediately shot up to the top of the polls and got elected. So that's why Vance is completely sold out. But the most interesting thing to me about those interviews is the constant theme is Vance really diagnosed Trump. He said he's figured out how to exploit rural white working class voters, how to push their buttons, and in a very dishonest way, and to take advantage of them. And now that's what J.D. Vance is doing.
You're right. I agree with everything you just said. And I don't think this moves the needle for Donald Trump. If it was like a Nikki Haley, I think that would bring those voters in. If it was a Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that would bring, some of those voters in. I don't think this helps Donald Trump at all. I mean, J.D. Vance is a far-right MAGA two-faced clown, in my opinion. The other day, right, he was blaming Joe Biden, blaming Joe Biden for the assassination attempt. What do you make of that?
Yeah. Well, first, let me just say, we were talking about this at Midas all week. If he was going to make this selection on who gave him the best chance to win, he would have picked Nikki Haley or Glenn Youngkin. And that's who we were terrified of, both, because Youngkin may have helped him carry Virginia, and then the election's over. We can't win without Virginia. So, but I said he's not going to make this pick based on what gives him the best chance to win. He's making this pick to satisfy the MAGA base, and this is who the MAGA base wanted. This is the guy. So what has he done? He has not expanded from his base. He hasn't branched out. And by the way, it's also the next article I'm about to write is how Trump picks all white men. If you look at the most senior positions of his cabinet, chief of staff, attorney general, secretary of defense, secretary of state, and VPs, it's all white men. And so, I mean, he appointed some like minorities and women to lower cabinet positions, but not to the big stuff. And
Yeah.
it just shows once again that point. But you asked me about the assassination stuff. I mean, obviously it's totally ridiculous. The only thing we know about this guy right now, because we don't have anything from his phone yet, is that he's 20 years old. He's a registered Republican. He voted once in 2022 in the midterms, and he belonged to a shooting club for a little while. I mean, and he lives in Trump country, and he's from a fairly well-off family. This
Ron,
does not sound like Antifa to me.
No, it's not. And I put out a video. I think it's got like 4 million views now. Just facts about this 20-year-old who was obviously deranged. You're right. Registered Republican. You hear the conspiracy theories. He's Antifa. He's a liberal. He was disguised as a Republican to try to hurt Republicans in elections. You've heard all the conspiracy theories, and even a guy like a J.D. Vance blaming Joe Biden. Now, I understand, Ron, that there are some people on the left that say stupid things, right? They'll compare Trump to Hitler. I don't agree with those statements. But what do you make of the far right now saying the left needs to lower the rhetoric when the guy who luckily he's alive today is the one who, and I talked about this earlier in the first segment, after Paul Pelosi was attacked, he's the one who made jokes about the attack. Donald Trump did that. If you remember when Governor Whitmer was in this horrible kidnap scheme, he said it was a fake deal. Donald Trump is the guy that probably would have been saying this stuff if it had happened to Joe Biden.
And the January 6th police officers who,
right.
100 of them plus went to the hospital. He never said a word about any of them, never visited them in the hospital. Yeah, joked numerous times about Paul Pelosi almost getting murdered by getting bashed with a hammer. So now we're supposed to have all this sympathy for Trump because he got clipped on the ear. I mean, look, this is a terrible thing, and it's a terrible thing that somebody got killed. And that's the other point. You hear a lot with these MAGA people how this was a miracle from God. God had a hand in this. God directed the bullet. I read all this stuff in MAGA social media. I'm like, wait a minute. Then God wanted the Trump supporter who was like the father of 2 firemen to die. That's what that was God's plan to save Trump and have this guy die. Give me a break,
I made that exact point on the show today and over the weekend. They talk about God, and yet you had 2 innocent people that were shot and 1 innocent person that lost his life. And they want to say, yeah, but God protected Orange Man. I mean, these people are absolutely crazy. I do want to talk to you, Ron, a little bit. And if you're just joining us, Ron Filipkowski from Midas Touch joining us about security and about the Secret Service. I mean, you saw the videos of people pointing, hey, there's a guy with a gun up there, interviews with people that told law enforcement they knew that he was up there. Now, we don't know how long they knew he was up there before the shooting, but they knew. We know a local law enforcement, a police officer went up there, engaged the suspect. Then the suspect points a gun at the officer and he goes back down. That's when he should have been taken out right then and there. I think this raises a lot of questions about some failures within the Secret Service. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, let me give you a different take on this that I've talked that you probably haven't heard before, that I've talked to the guys about as well, because I follow Trump behind the scenes so closely. So I do watch his Secret Service detail a lot, probably a lot more than anybody else. And I pay attention to what they're doing, because when I watch Trump behind the scenes videos, usually being filmed by his fans on their cell phones, I always watch the Secret Service and the people in the crowd to see the interactions. And I can tell you that I've complained over the last several months that his Secret Service detail acts more like campaign security than Secret Service. In other words, they're like moving people around they're moving people around for selfies, for different things that they shouldn't be involved in, to sort of help out with the Trump, helping him get hats signed and things like that, and footballs. And this is not their role. And so what I believe has happened, and I think that when they do the investigation, we are going to find out that Donald Trump or members of his campaign worked on Secret Service a lot to get them to cut corners and to get them to behave, to go against protocols, because they were using the Secret Service basically as a part of their campaign. And I really believe that that's what we're going to find out when this all fleshes out. But the most reprehensible stuff is that the Secret Service director is a woman. And, and two of the Secret Service agents on duty there, two or three out of, I don't know how many, 50, were women. And they immediately start saying this is because of women, that women should not be Secret Service agents. I saw this a lot, that it's okay for women to have corporate jobs or some jobs like that, but there's certain jobs that women really can't handle, and this is one of those jobs. This is the MAGA take.
Reprehensible. I have to ask you this question from a political perspective. And obviously I don't, take away, my biggest takeaway, of course, is as you thinking about the families who lost a loved one and the victims, but we also have to think about this. This is our job from a political perspective. Does this help Donald Trump at all win in November? Does it hurt Donald Trump win in November? You've heard the stories of some on the right calling him a hero, a martyr. You've heard that stuff. We've gotten your perspective on the J.D. Vance pick. I think we both agree this probably doesn't help Donald Trump. Do you think what happened over the weekend gets him more votes?
Well, the hot take stuff is just terrible. Some of the worst stuff on social media is always like right after something like this happens. You just, on both sides, you just see so much craziness. And I had friends text me like the election's over. No, I mean, I think it depends on a number of factors. Number one, how Trump handled it. And I think he's not handling it well. I think if he handled it the way he claimed he was going to handle it, I'm a changed man and reconciliation, and I'm going to help heal the country and all that stuff. Well, that lasted a few hours because he put out a tweet attacking Joe Biden this morning. So that's not the case. So that's one factor, how Joe Biden handled it. If Joe Biden handled it in a callous or flippant way, which he did not, would have been a factor. And I think who the shooter is and who the motives are. If this was a Democrat, some radical Trump hater, then I think that he could exploit it a lot more than he can under the current situation. But look, they're ultimately going to get into his phone. I know that they're having some difficulty, apparently, according to reports, tapping into the data in his phone. But that's probably going to tell the story about why this guy did it. I'm inclined to think this guy just wanted to be famous. He was just a nobody who had no friends, and he wasn't really going anywhere in life or whatever. And he just wanted to be famous. And Trump rolls into town. He's a gun nut. He takes a shot at Trump.
I tend to agree with you. I tend to agree with you, Ron. I think we'll learn a little bit more, but obviously a deranged young man who did something horrible and paid the price for it, and rightfully so. Last question, Ron, before I let you go, I have to ask you this. If you were one of Joe Biden's top advisors, what is your opinion right now as we speak, 4 months before the election? Do you think Joe Biden should step aside? Good job, Mr. President. Or do you believe he should stay in this race? Now, I know your opinion might change in a couple months, right? Mine seems to change. But right now, what do you think Joe Biden should do to give the Democrats the best chance to defeat Donald Trump?
I think that it's really important for the Democrats to be unified. I think that we were incredibly unified in 2020. In fact, when I was a Republican, I was unified. It was this broad coalition of, everybody from Bernie bros to former Republicans that came together, 81 million of us, to beat Trump. And it's going to take that coalition again. The things that are distressing me the most right now are the big donors talking about freezing their pledged donations, something like $90 million worth. That would be catastrophic. So I think the campaign knows better than we do, sort of behind the scenes, who's really with them and who's not. And I think that they're going to make that call soon. So I don't know. I don't want to say like Joe Biden should drop out. I'm not one of those guys. I think that he should come to that decision on his own. And I really don't think it's our place to sort of push him one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't want to ask you that, but maybe I'll phrase the question a different way.
Okay.
Do you think Kamala Harris has a better chance to defeat Donald Trump than Joe Biden?
Yeah, I think, first of all, any polls like that do hypothetical matchups are always wrong. History has so when you pick any hypothetical person and you put them in a poll, they always underperform because they're not the candidate yet. And they're not getting all the attention. So I would pay no attention to that. Clearly, that would be here's the problem. If you did not choose Harris, you would have a serious base problem. You know, a serious base problem.
Yeah.
Especially if you dropped her for like a Gavin Newsom, you know, that would be pretty bad. You know, you're basically taking a woman from color, senator from California, and dropping her for a white guy from California. You know, it's just not a good look. I think Kamala Harris is very underestimated. I think she would be a better candidate than a lot of people think. I think, you know, her main weakness is sort of talking in word salads and being very verbose and maybe a little, you know, laughs a little too much when she speaks. Those are all easily fixable problems when you become the main person. But, you know, she would have to, if she kept everything about the Biden team in place, all the campaign people, all the comms people, everything in place as is, the same staff, I think she would do very well. If she starts firing people and getting rid of people and trying to change everything, then I think she won't do well.
I tend to agree with you. I don't think she would do that. If in fact Joe Biden is going to step down, which I'm not sure he is speaking at the NAACP convention in Las Vegas tomorrow. They're both holding I've heard a campaign rally Wednesday. So if he is going to do something like that, it's got to happen sooner than later. But I agree with your sentiment and what you said, Ron, on such a very busy news day. I appreciate you taking the time. I love what you guys do at Midas Touch, and we'll talk soon, my friend. Thank you so much for your time.
You got it, buddy.
Appreciate that. Okay. Thank you. That's Ron Filipkowski, everybody. What a great, probably my favorite. I have a lot of fun follows on social media. Ron's Twitter account is